3 weeks after the audit wrapped, my phone buzzed with a blocked number again. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Linda Garrison? The voice on the other end asked. Crisp, authoritative, not Robert, not Janice. Yes, this is Special Agent Derek Nguyen with the Department of Labor's Office of Inspector General. We're reviewing your previous submission. Do you have a moment? I sat upright. My heart didn't pound, but something inside me leaned forward, alert. I do, I said calmly. Agent Nguyen explained they'd flagged a pattern, a discrepancy, something beyond just back pay or misclassification. Something that triggered a referral up the chain. There were whispers of falsified forms, forged signatures, phantom contractors, names on payment sheets that didn't match W-2s. Some of it, he said carefully, looked deliberate. And then came the part that made my skin prickle. We believe someone may have used your credentials, Miss Garrison, to approve payment records you never signed. The room went very still. I'd like to meet in person. We'd like to show you what we found. The next morning, I met Agent Nguyen and his partner at a quiet cafe near downtown Louisville. Neutral ground. They slid a laptop across the table. There it was, my signature, or what looked like it, on 3 different approval forms for high-dollar payouts to independent consultants. Consultants I'd never worked with, names I didn't recognize. The timestamp matched a week I'd been out sick with bronchitis. I remembered it vividly. I couldn't talk, let alone sign anything. I pointed this out. Agent Nguyen nodded. We checked system logs. The approvals were done from your login on a company device, but the IP address, it pinged off-site. A chill crept up my arms. So someone logged in as me remotely, I said slowly. He nodded. We think someone with admin access cloned your credentials. I stared at the screen. The numbers were staggering, 6 figures in phantom payouts, falsified approvals. Someone had been funneling money through shell contractors and using my name to rubber stamp it. Why didn't I ever see this? I whispered. You might have, he said, but they buried it in backend logs. It's clean, but not that clean. Suddenly, this wasn't just about bad payroll practices or a smug HR firing. This was fraud. And someone had tried to make me the fall guy. By the following week, things got darker. Carla called me, whispering like she was in a spy movie. Linda, she said, you need to be careful, I overheard something. She'd walked into a finance office late one evening and caught the tail end of a conversation. Someone, possibly Jeff from accounting, had joked about blaming the audit fallout on a disgruntled former employee. And he said your name, Linda. Out loud, like they were testing the idea, like maybe if this all goes sideways, they pin it on you. That's when I knew I had to go on the offensive. This wasn't just a company imploding from neglect anymore. Someone in that building was laundering money, and they'd used me as a ghost signature. Now they were trying to rewrite history, erase the breadcrumbs, and if I didn't act fast, I'd become the scapegoat for a scandal I didn't create. So I called Agent Nguyen. I want to help, I said, but not just as a witness. He paused. Go on. I kept backup copies, email threads, draft policies they never implemented, and I remember everything. Even things your team won't find unless they know exactly where to look. I heard the interest sharpen in his voice. All right, he said. Then let's bring this into the light. 2 days later, I met with the federal audit team inside a secure conference room at the state labor office. They gave me a visitor badge and a mug of weak government coffee, but I didn't care. I came armed with a USB stick and a printed binder labeled Unsubmitted Drafts and Deleted Memos. I'd printed it that way on purpose. Inside were copies of everything I'd quietly archived over the years. Emails Robert had sent me with phrases like, just adjust the classification for now, we'll fix it later. Screenshots of payroll changes pushed through late at night with no documentation. Expense reimbursements labeled as consulting fees with no consultant listed. And the real bombshell, a memo draft from 3 years ago that never got submitted because Janice from HR told me to hold off. The subject line read, Recurring Contractor Payout Irregularities Recommendation for External Review. I remembered when I wrote it. A series of payments to the same 5 contractors, all paid on the 15th of every month. No hours logged, no addresses, no tax documents filed, just names and wire transfers. I raised it. Janice told me to hold off until next quarter's strategy meeting. Then the issue vanished from my to-do list, like it had never existed. But I kept the memo. Now it sat in front of two federal agents with pens paused over their legal pads. "Why didn't you submit this formally?" Agent Nguyen asked. "I tried," I said simply. "But at the time, I trusted the system." He looked at me, then tapped his pen. "Well, the system's listening now." By the next week, a federal subpoena was issued, not just to the company, but to individual executives. And I wasn't the only one talking anymore. Carla came forward. So did two others from finance, quiet, nervous people who had always followed orders. Now they were offering testimony, internal chats, meeting notes. One of them had secretly recorded a meeting where Robert said the words, "We can clean this up before anyone notices." Clean, up, not fix. The difference mattered. And then came the break I didn't expect. A burner Gmail account sent a single message to my old work inbox, which I still had forwarding to my personal email. Subject, "You're not crazy. Start with Jacob A. That's it." But I remembered the name, Jacob Abernathy. An external compliance advisor we supposedly hired during a system migration 5 years ago. I remembered because I'd flagged his invoice as incomplete. No EIN, no W-9. Janice overrode it, said it was urgent. Approved it without a second look. When I asked about it back then, she brushed me off. Said he was a consultant used by our CEO's private equity firm. Except, there was no Jacob Abernathy in any consultant registry. And he was the recipient of over $300,000 in advisory payments over a span of 14 months. That name became the new center of the investigation. By now, the company was in lockdown mode. No press releases. No internal updates. Just silence and red eyes behind office doors. Until one morning, Carla messaged me, "Robert resigned, effective immediately. He left without even cleaning out his office." That same day, Janice deleted her LinkedIn profile. And by Friday, the company's website listed a transitional leadership team headed by a crisis consultant out of Chicago. I watched it all unfold from my apartment, Deborah the plant thriving by the window. And then my phone buzzed again. "Agent Nguyen. We'd like you to testify, Miss Garrison, not just as a witness, as an expert. This is going federal." 3 weeks later, I found myself standing in a stark, gray building in downtown Washington, D.C., under the buzz of fluorescent lights and the quiet hum of government seriousness. I wasn't here as a whistleblower anymore. I was an expert witness in a federal labor fraud case. They seated me at a long table in front of a panel, DOJ attorneys, labor board officials, and two investigators from the IRS. The nameplate in front of me read, "Linda Garrison, Compliance Consultant." For the first time, my title felt like it meant something. I walked them through everything. The missing I-9s, the quietly reclassified employees, the strange recurring contractor payments, the time-stamped approvals during my sick leave. Every breadcrumb I'd collected over 16 silent years. But the moment the room shifted was when I explained how access logs worked, how admin users could impersonate employee logins, how the phantom approvals were traced back to a workstation used by, wait for it, Janice. Not just her login, her actual laptop. The MAC address matched. Agent Nguyen sat forward. "And to your knowledge, was there any company-wide policy authorizing that kind of admin override?" "No," I said. "In fact, I flagged it in a compliance memo 2 years ago. I was told not to worry about it." The lead DOJ attorney looked up from her notepad. "And who told you that, Miss Garrison?" I paused. "Robert." Silence, pens scratching. The sound of careers folding inward like broken umbrellas. The federal case moved quickly after that. Turns out Jacob Abernathy didn't exist. The name was fake. A shell account, tied to an LLC registered in Delaware under a P.O. box and connected to a private bank account in Florida. That account was linked to Robert's cousin. When the FBI finally got involved, it stopped being about labor violations. It became wire fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement. They raided the corporate office one quiet Wednesday morning. Carla texted me just 2 words. "They're here." Black sedans, men in suits. Janice escorted out in tears. Jeff from accounting apparently locked himself in the copy room for 30 minutes. By noon, the story broke online. Midwest logistics firm under federal investigation for payroll fraud, executive misconduct. By 3 p.m., investors pulled out. Stockholders filed suit. Emergency board meetings were leaked. And Robert. He tried to flee the country. They caught him boarding a private jet in Cincinnati with a fake ID, 2 burner phones, and a laptop that had already been wiped. He was indicted the next day. I never celebrated. Not outwardly. Not with champagne or headlines. I just took a long walk by the Ohio River, the leaves turning gold around me, the wind sharp but clean. And that night, I received an email from a junior compliance officer at a tech startup in Phoenix. Subject: Saw your testimony, I work alone here. They ignore me too. Can I ask you something? I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. Yes. And here's what I've learned. The quietest people in the room often hold the sharpest truth. Don't stop paying attention. Someday, that truth will matter more than you know. 3 months later, I sat in the back of a modest conference room at a business development summit in Asheville, North Carolina. Nothing flashy. No keynote lights or influencer panels. Just a quiet gathering of compliance officers, HR professionals, and a few startup founders who'd learned the hard way that ignoring regulations was like taping over a leaking pipe. I wasn't there to listen, I was the speaker. They introduced me simply: Linda Garrison, independent compliance consultant formerly with Midwest Logistics. The room clapped politely, unsure of what to expect, and then I began. 3 words changed my career: you're redundant now. 3 more nearly ended it: thanks for confirming. But the 4 words that started a reckoning: I didn't do this. There was a pause. Then the room shifted, pens stopped moving, eyes locked in. I told them the story. Not the whole dramatic arc, not the headlines, just the truth of what happens when invisible labor gets erased, when compliance gets silenced, when companies run on duct tape and ego instead of systems and ethics. And I told them what I'd learned. That silence isn't safety. That being quiet doesn't mean you aren't paying attention. That the people who keep everything from falling apart are rarely the ones in corner offices, but they're often the first to be blamed when things go wrong. I finished with one sentence. Don't wait to be heard. Build systems that speak for you. The room erupted, not just with applause but with something heavier: recognition. The company I used to work for, it survived, but barely. After the indictments, the fines, and the shattered public trust, they were acquired by a larger firm out of New York. Robert pled guilty to multiple counts of wire fraud and tax evasion. He's serving a 5-year sentence, eligible for parole in 3. Janice took a deal, testified, turned over internal emails, and disappeared into some boutique HR firm in Idaho. And Jeff from accounting, he wrote me a message on LinkedIn 2 months ago. I owe you an apology, I didn't see it, but I do now. I didn't reply, not out of pettiness, but because sometimes silence is the final chapter. I live differently now. I consult for nonprofits, for small businesses who want to get it right. I help startups build clean processes before investors arrive. I teach young professionals how to document, how to speak up, and how to recognize red flags before they're pinned with blame. And Deborah, my little office plant, she's still thriving by the window, same as me. Some days I walk past glass buildings like the one I used to work in. I wonder how many invisible Lindas are still tucked in cubicles, fixing broken systems, remembering everything. And I want to tell them, keep your records. Keep your dignity, keep watching. Because one day when they try to silence you, you'll realize something: they never saw you coming. And when the lights come on, they'll wish they had. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or pushed out by someone in power, drop your city in the comments. Let them know we're everywhere. Like, subscribe, and remember, quiet doesn't mean powerless. The system listens, eventually.